Hi folks, it's Sarah here, and I'm just doing a quick update on my prep so far. So today is the end of week 1, and I thought I'd just do a quick check-in and see how we're going. Now, for those of you who are following me for the first time, I thought maybe I'll just give you a quick overview of who I am and what I've done and where I'm at, just to give you a bit of background. So I am Pro Miss Olympia, 2 times Pro Miss Universe with the PNBA and WNBF. I'm also 2 times Pro Miss World with the PNBA, and I have 11 amateur world titles as well. I can't count how many amateur titles I have overall, but I've been competing now for 5 seasons, so this is actually only going to be my 6th season, which kind of surprised me actually. My first season was 2011, but 2012 was a total write-off because I had double shoulder surgery. I had torn tendons in all of my limbs, like hamstring tendons gone, elbow tendons gone. I had gross bursitis in both hips and both knees, so my body was a complete write-off, and I had to spend a whole year in rehab, literally rebuilding my body from the ground up. So I didn't compete in 2012. So 2013 was kind of a comeback year. 2014 I went overseas for the first time, and I did 3 competitions in Los Angeles, Toronto and Boston in the space of 3 weeks, and won all 11 of my lineups. So that was amazing. Then 2015 I won my 2 Pro Miss Universe titles. 2016 I didn't compete again, and then 2017 was amazing. That's when I won my 2 Pro World Cups and Pro Miss Olympia. So that's where I am at the moment, and this year, like I say, I haven't decided what competitions I'm aiming for. I've got a couple in mind, but I'm just going to go have a bit of fun with it this year. I really want to sort of try a couple of different competitions maybe, and who knows, let's see if I can set a really grand target of getting to 20 world titles. That would be quite staggering. Anyway, let's see how this goes. So that's a little bit of a background on me and what I've done so far, and let's kick off with the end of week 1. Now, as I said on my video last week, I'm giving myself 30 weeks to prep. Now that's an incredibly long period of time, even for me, when I usually do sort of 20 to 24 weeks prep. And that's because, like I said last week, with where my body is right now, it's so significantly different from the space I was in 2017, when everything just clicked. I did an 11-month season in 2017 with 2 international trips. I competed in England for the first time, which was amazing, in front of my family, and also obviously in Los Angeles and Las Vegas, where I won my PNBA titles. So look, it was a very long season, and then when I started my prep last year, after 8 weeks, it just wasn't working, so I pulled out. And then, having had all my sort of hormones tested and stuff, with my hormonal profile being completely flatlined, it seems to have taken my metabolism down with it, and at the moment I think I'm sitting at about 15% off my maintenance level. So as a starting point, that's not particularly ideal. So I've done all my online calculators. My maintenance level of calories for, I guess, my height, weight and lean body mass should be about 2,000 calories. Now, normally I'd start a prep on about 2,200 calories and go down from there and end on around about 1,650 to 1,600, depending how I'm looked. So in 2017, I held sort of sub 10% body fat for all the way from June. Well, I guess I hit sub 10% probably in May, really, because my first competition was early June, so I was sub 10% already in May, and I held that all the way through to the middle of November. So that's a phenomenally long time to hold sub 10% body fat, and I was doing that relatively easily on about 1,600 calories. So the fact that I'm starting at what I think is about 15% off my maintenance is not particularly good. So this is also why I've decided to go with the keto diet. I really, because my hormones are so low, my body basically is in a completely fat storage environment. Like I said before, anytime I sort of pop it up to about maintenance level, I started putting on fat, and I'm currently sitting at about 2.5 kilos above where I want to be when I start a prep. Now, and that's been a bit of a battle, like I say, holding that. So I said last week that I was going to start my starting calories at 15% off, and that's about around about sort of 1750 to 1800 calories. And I'm going to go with the keto diet because I want my body to learn how to use fat for energy. Previously, I always go high protein, low carb, and by the end of a prep, I'm usually on about 65 to even 70% protein and virtually no carbs, or just carbs just coming from, you know, sort of green fibrous vegetables, with sort of 1 or 2 refeeds a week. So that's what my usual diet is. And when I tried that sort of before Christmas, I did do an actual 4-week sort of mini cut kind of thing. Nothing shifted. It just did not work. So that's why I've decided to flip something up, you know, flip something completely new that I haven't done for a very long time, because I actually need to relearn my body. You know, I used to know my body incredibly well and exactly how it operated. That's why I've always found prep to be great fun and really easy. But the situation I'm in right now, I'm actually in a situation where I've got to completely relearn my body. So I'm retraining it to use fat for energy, hence the keto diet. Now, the starting macros. Now, there's an awful lot of myths about the keto diet. So I'll just go through a couple of those before we sort of get into how I've set up my diet. So a lot of people say that you can't gain muscle or you'll lose muscle on the keto diet because you can't eat enough protein, and that's absolute crap. You can, on a keto diet, have up to sort of 30% protein. Potentially, if you're on enough calories, you can have up to about 30% protein and not bump yourself out of ketosis. And the longer and deeper you go into ketosis, actually the less protein you need to maintain your muscle mass. So you can gain muscle on a ketogenic diet, and in fact one of the variations of ketogenic diets was developed by bodybuilders for bodybuilders for the purposes of gaining mass. Now, it's not an optimal way of gaining muscle, that is true. However, you can gain muscle on a ketogenic diet, and like I say, it was created initially by bodybuilders for bodybuilders. Now, so that being said, that's one myth. Another myth that you might hear is you can't eat fruit on a ketogenic diet. Also total crap. I've been eating cherries all last week just because I love cherries. As long as you're not blowing your carbohydrate limit, it doesn't really matter necessarily what the source of those carbohydrates is. Now, obviously, because carbohydrates are so limited, you want to make them the highest quality carbs that you possibly can. So, you know, no donuts or anything like that, obviously. But you can have fruit on a ketogenic diet. So again, that is a myth busted. Now, what are the types of ketogenic diet? Well, there's the original diet is called the standard ketogenic diet, and that essentially is where once you're in ketosis, you basically drop your carbs and increase your fats to the point where you're only on about 5% of carbs a day, or anything under about 50 grams of carbs a day should have, with enough fats, should have you in ketosis. Now, some people can stay in ketosis right up to 100 grams of carbs a day, but these are sort of people who've been doing it for a very long time. Okay, so in general, ketosis is considered to kind of kick in when you're below 50 grams of carbs a day, and as a starting point, you probably need to aim for about 30 grams of carbs a day. That's the standard ketogenic diet, and you just once you're in ketosis, that's all what you do all week, all day, you just do that. Now, one of the variations is the cyclical ketogenic diet, and this is the one that was actually specifically created by Dan Duchaine with his Body Opus. There's also another kind of diet called the anabolic diet, which is basically where you're in ketosis for 5 to 6 days, and then you do 1 or 2 days of high carb loading. And again, that's a personal thing, depending on how long you've been in ketosis and how you know, sort of how deep you are in ketosis. But the purpose behind the cyclical ketogenic diet was actually, as I say, for bodybuilders to assist with gaining muscle mass, because on those 2 high carb days, which were sort of kind of resting days as well, it's entirely possible to eat enough carbs to refill your glycogen stores and aid muscle gain. So the cyclical ketogenic diet was actually developed by bodybuilders. Okay, and like I say, when you're starting, if you are going to do a cyclical ketogenic diet, and again, the purpose of that was to maintain intensity in your workouts. So you'd take 1 or 2 days to refill your glycogen stores, meaning that you could really smash out your workouts for the following week while you were back in ketosis. That's something that whether you do 1 or 2 days or even just one meal, that's a personal choice, but that's the purpose of the cyclical ketogenic diet. Then the last variation is the targeted ketogenic diet, and this is where you specifically have carbs around your workout. And again, the purpose is to maintain workout intensity. Okay. Now, of the 3 of the variations, the standard ketogenic diet is ideal for people who don't exercise really, or just do low intensity sort of exercise. It's kind of the beginner ketogenic diet. The targeted ketogenic diet is for more intermediate sort of lifters, to maintain a little bit more intensity, and the cyclical ketogenic diet is generally considered to be for advanced lifters. So those are the 3 variations, and the one I'm going to do actually is the targeted ketogenic diet. So I'm going to target my carbs specifically around workouts. All right. So those are the ketogenic diets, those are the types. So let's get into what I'm actually doing with mine. So, like I say, usually I like to start a prep on about 2,200 calories. This time around I'm starting at about 1,750 to 1,800. And what I've decided to do is go with 60% fat and 30% protein, and the rest of it is carbs. Now, that's what my ideal sort of ratio is. So the way you set up a ketogenic diet is, most people think you start with the amount of fat. Well, you don't. You start with the amount of protein. Now, in a ketogenic diet, if you don't want to lose muscle mass, if you want to maintain muscle mass, you must set your protein level at least 1 gram per pound, or 150 grams, whichever's the greater. Now, unfortunately for me, if I do the 150 grams of protein, then that means I'm on too much protein. So I'm putting it down to 140 grams of protein, because that gives me the 1 gram per pound necessary in my sort of calorie allowance. And then the next thing I wanted to do, so that's 506, so 140 grams of protein is 560 calories. Now, the next macro to set up is your fat macro. So I decided I wanted to do 60% fat. Now, 60% of 1750 is 1,050 calories, which gives me about 100, divide that by 9, so it gives me about 125 grams of fat a day. So between the protein and the fat, so 1,050 calories of fat and 560 calories of protein, that's 1,610 calories. Now, if I'm only on 1,750, that only gives me 140 calories left to play with for carbs, and 140 calories divided by 4 gives me 35 grams of carbs. So those are my macro splits. So I'm on 140 grams of protein, 35 grams of carbs, and 125 grams of fat. And that gives me it actually gives me a 60% fat, 32% protein, and 8% carbs. So now, in terms of cutting, I'm always going to want to try and maintain my protein at the 140 grams, which means I'm only going to have a very little wriggle room to play with, because I'm at 8% carbs already, so 35 grams carbs is not a huge amount to play with. So once I get that down below 5%, that's really the only sort of wriggle room I'm going to be able to play with. So I'm probably not going to be doing the ketogenic diet for my whole prep, but I just wanted to do it to start with, just to see if it could absolutely start some fat loss. And I'm actually feeling really good. So I think I'm already in ketosis after only a week, because I've been sort of, I guess probably for the last sort of 8 weeks or so, I've been focusing on being on a fairly low carb diet anyway, with the exception of Christmas Day, obviously, when all bets were off. So I've been on a fairly low sort of carb regime anyway for the last 8 weeks. So getting into ketosis really hasn't been an issue. I did have one day when I felt a little bit tired. And look, when you're doing the ketogenic diet, it's always a good idea to lead into it very, very gradually, because if you've been on a standard diet where you've been having lots and lots of carbs and stuff like that, and you just all of a sudden cut them out completely, then you're going to get what's known as keto flu. While your body's adapting to using fat for energy, it's not very efficient at that, and it's also not very efficient at processing carbs either. So you'll probably feel tired, lethargic, you'll lose energy in the gym, you'll feel a bit weak, you could feel nauseous, dizzy, lightheaded, your joints might ache. You could have all of these sort of symptoms, and this is known as keto flu. And I guess it's essentially your body sort of coming off. It's almost like, I guess, an addict rehabbing. It's like the body rehabbing off carbs into fats. So you can just feel like complete crap if you do it too quickly. So if you're going to do ketogenic diet, then lead into it gradually. I recommend taking about 4 weeks to get your carbs down and your fats up. And then it takes you probably about 4 weeks to get into deep ketosis. So I've been doing this for a week and I'm feeling really good. The benefits of ketosis, however, are it's like you just have tons of energy. I have tons of energy, no brain fog, I'm thinking really clearly, I'm super productive at work, which is awesome because now that I'm a chief operations officer, so I'm kind of running the company, I'm kind of second in command and running the place. Yeah, I sort of need to be on my game. So look, after a week I'm really enjoying it, and I'm feeling, what's important is I'm feeling lean. I'm not sure, I haven't weighed myself, I'm sort of specifically staying off the scales, but I can already feel leaner, I feel lighter, and I just feel that I have come in sort of around my middle. I feel that I've lost through my middle. Unfortunately, where the weight's come on has been around my middle, and this is a very typical sort of older female problem, is that you start turning into this apple-shaped person and lose your nice hourglass. So I've been very conscious of the fact that the extra fat that I'm carrying, which I don't want to be carrying, has come onto my middle, and I'm starting to look like a little Teletubby. If you're English, you'll probably know what a Teletubby is, but it's not a particularly attractive look, at least I don't think so, and I don't like it. But I really feel that this week I have lost, and it's come off my middle, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. So I haven't weighed myself, like I say, but I'll put up pictures. What I'll do is I'll edit the video and I'll put up some pictures. So as always, when I'm doing my prep videos, full transparency of absolutely everything I'm doing. So I do have some photographs of what I look like at the moment, and we'll see how I come in. I will go through training next in another video, but I think we'll leave it for there today. So that is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm feeling really good. I do feel that I've come in. So over the next couple of weeks, as ketosis gets deeper, I do expect to see some really good changes. All right, so there's my update for the week. I hope you're having a good week, and look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care. Bye.